Good evening, and welcome to Frontline Science Review, where we break down medical research clearly and practically. I'm Dr. Sadler, a board-certified hematologist, and today we're covering a narrative review published in Microbial Pathogenesis in 2022 titled ABO Blood Group and Linked to COVID-19, a comprehensive review of the reported associations and their possible underlying mechanisms. To help explain the research, I'm joined by three specialists. First, Dr. Alicia Simmons, a clinical epidemiologist who studies patterns in infectious diseases. Next, Dr. Tamera, a public health data analyst who works extensively with large-scale national and international datasets. And finally, Dr. Sandra Owusu, a molecular immunologist who focuses on how viruses interact with human cells in the immune system. Together, we're going to explore whether your blood type plays any role in your risk of getting COVID-19 and whether it influences how severe the disease might become. To begin our report, we go to Dr. Simmons for the background and the purpose of this article. Dr. Simmons?
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. To begin, the ABO blood group system includes the familiar types A, B, AB, and O. Each of these types is defined by specific carbohydrate antigens in our cells and by the natural antibodies our bodies produce against the antigens we lack. Blood type has been linked to susceptibility to several infections, including HIV, hepatitis B, and West Nile virus. So, when SARS-CoV-2 emerged in late 2019 and rapidly spread across the world, causing tens of millions of cases in the first year, researchers naturally wondered whether the ABO blood type might also contribute to the risk of COVID-19. This review set out to bring together existing evidence on two key topics: whether ABO blood type affects the chance of getting infected with SARS-CoV-2, and whether it affects the chances of experiencing more severe outcomes such as hospitalization, admission to the ICU, or even death. The authors also examined potential biological mechanisms that might explain why these associations appear in some studies.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. That gives us a strong foundation for our discussion. Now, to understand how the authors gathered evidence and what patterns emerge across different countries and study designs, we turn to Dr. Small.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. This paper is a narrative literature review, which means that authors pulled together results from many previously published studies rather than conducting new experiments themselves. The studies they summarized include a wide range of research designs and came from countries all over the world, such as China, Spain, Denmark, Turkey, Canada, the United States, India, and others. Across these studies, certain patterns appeared repeatedly. Many reports found that blood type A was associated with higher likelihood of SARS-CoV-2 infection, while blood type O often showed lower likelihood. This trend was seen in some of the larger studies as well, including work from China and Denmark. At the same time, the findings weren't identical everywhere. In some regions, especially in parts of Asia and the Middle East, researchers observed that blood types B and AB sometimes showed an increased risk. And importantly, several studies conducted in multi-ethnic populations in the United States found no significant association between ABO type and infection at all, which highlights how population genetics and local blood type distribution can influence results. When we look at the disease severity, the picture becomes more mixed. Some studies reported that individuals with blood type A were more likely to develop severe COVID-19 or require intensive care, and that individuals with blood type O seemed to fare better, especially among critically ill patients or those who had pre-existing cardiovascular disease. However, many other studies found no meaningful relationship between ABO blood type and severity when looking at broader groups, such as all hospitalized patients or all test-positive individuals. So overall, while blood type A versus blood type O differences show up in many analyses, they are not universal and depend heavily on the study population and setting.
Very clear and very informative. Thank you, Dr. Small. Now, let's move on to the biological side of the story. What mechanisms might explain these associations? For that, we go to Dr. Owusu at our science desk.
Thank you, Dr. Sadler. I'm going to be speaking more so on the mechanisms. So the review actually highlights several biological mechanisms that might explain how ABO blood type could influence both susceptibility to COVID-19 and the severity of the disease. One idea involves that the natural antibodies produced by people with different blood types, the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 is highly decorated with sugar molecules, and so when this virus actually replicates inside humans, it can sometimes pick up ABO-related structures on its outer surface. So individuals with type O blood naturally produce both anti-A and anti-B antibodies, which may partially neutralize the virus if it comes from a person with an incompatible blood type. This mechanism would mainly influence the likelihood of becoming infected, rather than the severity of the illness once infected. Another proposed mechanism involves the way ABO antigens affect the surface of our cells. These antigens can influence how certain sugar structures are clustered on respiratory cells. Some models suggest that antigen A may promote a cell surface environment that better supports viral attachment. So this is still an early and developing area of research, but it could help explain why type A appears more frequently in infection-related findings. There are also, a very well-established connection between ABO blood type and the clotting system. People with non-O blood types generally have higher circulating levels of clotting-related proteins, particularly the von Willebrand factor and factor VIII. Severe COVID-19 is known to trigger significant clotting patterns in some patients. And so because type O individuals actually naturally have lower levels of these proteins, they may be at a slightly lower risk of actually experiencing clotting related complications, which could also help explain why some studies found that type O was associated with better outcomes. Finally, genetic studies add another layer. A major genome-wide association study involving millions of genetic variants identified a strong link between severe COVID-19 with respiratory failure in a region of the genome corresponding to the ABO gene. Other studies using genetic prediction methods found that individuals with genetically higher ABO protein levels appear to have an increased level of both infection and severe disease. Taken together, these mechanisms connect ABO type 2 infection risk, immune interactions, clotting biology, and genetic predisposition, although more research is certainly needed to fully understand these relations.
Thank you, Dr. Owusu, for connecting the molecular and clinical perspectives. As we wrap up, this review makes one thing clear. ABO blood type can contribute to both infection risk and COVID-19 severity, but is only one part of a much larger picture. Blood type O often appears linked to lower infection risk, and blood type A often appears linked to higher risk, but these patterns are not consistent across all studies or populations. For severity, type A shows up more frequently as a risk factor, while type O seems more protective in certain groups, especially among critically ill or cardiovascularly high-risk patients. At the same time, many studies show no association at all. COVID-19 outcomes still depend far more on age, underlying conditions, and other major health and social factors. Additionally, the authors emphasize that blood type should not be used on its own to guide clinical decisions. Still, this research may help refine risk models, improve our understanding of host-virus interactions, and inform strategies for managing clotting-related complications. That concludes our discussion of ABO blood group and linked to COVID-19 by Pereira and colleagues. Thank you to Dr. Simmons, Dr. Small, and Dr. Owusu for their insights. And thank you all for tuning in. This is Frontline Science Review. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay blessed.